Well, good morning. This Subcommittee on Energy and Environment will come to order. Pursuant to notice, the Subcommittee on Energy and Environment meets to consider the following measures: H.R. 4174, Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act of 2007, H.R. 5618, National Sea Grant College Program Amendments Act of 2008, and a bill to establish a research, development, demonstration, and commercial application program to promote research of appropriate technologies for heavy-duty plug-in hybrid vehicles and for other purposes. We will now proceed with the markup, beginning with the opening statements. I will begin. Today, the subcommittee will consider three good bills. The first is H.R. 4174, the Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act. This bill establishes an interagency ocean acidification research and monitoring program. H.R. 4174 was introduced by our colleague from Maine, Congressman Tom Allen, and is sponsored by a member of this subcommittee, Mr. Baird. On June 5th, we heard a panel of experts on ocean and atmospheric sciences testify in strong support of this legislation. The bill authorizes the formation of an interagency research and monitoring program to better understand ocean acidification and its potential impacts on marine organisms and marine ecosystems. The second bill that we'll consider is H.R. 5618, the National Sea Grant College Program Amendments Act. H.R. 5618 was introduced by Delegate Bardalo, Chair of the Committee on Natural Resources, Subcommittee on Fisheries, Wildlife, and Oceans. This bill reauthorizes and amends the National Sea Grant College Program Act to implement changes in the program recommended by the National Academy of Sciences. The National Sea Grant College Program was last reauthorized in 2002. It is a partnership between states and the federal government to promote understanding, conservation, and management of our ocean, coastal, and Great Lakes resources. Sea Grant's research, education, and extension programs have been very effective in training future scientists and resource managers, generating information to support sound resource management, and delivering applied research results to the people who rely on our coastal areas and Great Lakes for their livelihoods. Finally, the subcommittee will consider draft legislation authored by Mr. Sensenbrenner, ranking member of the Investigations and Oversight Subcommittee, to enhance the Department of Energy's research program in heavy-duty hybrid trucks. Mr. Sensenbrenner does not sit on this subcommittee and thus will not be joining us today. I understand that the manager's amendment has only one small technical change that needs to be made prior to introduction. This bill addresses a narrow segment of the automobile market with a tremendous potential impact. We heard in a subcommittee hearing last week from witnesses who described the substantial oil savings and emissions reductions to be had in medium to heavy hybrid trucks, as well as the benefits to the whole domestic automotive sector from the invaluable lessons learned in designing and manufacturing these systems. I believe this is a very important piece of legislation in the large and complex puzzle that is in our transportation sector, and I look forward to moving this bill through the committee and onto the floor for consideration by the House. I urge the support of all members of the subcommittee for the three bills we'll consider today. I look forward to working with all of you to further improve these important bills as we move to their consideration by the full committee. I now recognize Mr. Inglis to present his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this markup. Excuse me. Today we will consider three bills before the subcommittee. H.R. 4174, the Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act, would organize and coordinate federal agency efforts to address ocean acidification into a comprehensive research, monitoring, and assessment program. 2 weeks ago, this subcommittee held a hearing in which we received several recommended changes from the expert panel of witnesses. Representative Baird and I will introduce an amendment that acts upon these recommendations. As we move forward to full committee, I hope that we can further improve the international components of this bill and encourage our scientists to work with their colleagues overseas. Secondly, we'll consider H.R. 5618, the National Sea Grant College Program Amendments Act. Since its inception in 1966, the National Sea Grant Program has been a successful collaborative effort of the federal government, state governments, and universities. Under the program, these groups work together to understand, develop, and conserve our coastal and ocean resources. As we mark up H.R. 5618, our goal should be a reauthorization that equips the Sea Grant Program to continue providing sound science and management products that benefit our coastal regions and conserve our coastal resources. Finally, we will consider draft legislation introduced by Mr. Sensenbrenner that would steer federal dollars toward research, development, and demonstration in the area of commercial truck hybrid technologies. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working with you to advance these pieces of legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. Without objection, members may place additional opening statements in the record at this point. We will now consider H.R. 4174, the Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act of 2007. I mentioned the goals of this legislation in my opening remarks, and I will just again express my support for Congressman Allen's bill. I now recognize Mr. Inglis for any remarks on the bill.
I have no further remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone wish to be recognized?
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Clerk will read the amendment. Oh, wait. You really didn't mean to say that right there.
Mr. Chairman, I take back what I just said.
Thank you very much. And I take back my remark. All of that's going to be in the record. I ask unanimous consent that the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that members proceed with amendments in the order of the roster. Without objection, so ordered. Now, the first amendment on the roster is an amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentleman from Washington. Mr. Baird, are you ready with your...
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4174, offered by Mr. Baird of Washington and Mr. Inglis of South Carolina.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading, and without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman from Washington for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for holding this hearing and for moving this important legislation forward. I want to commend Mr. Allen, who introduced the bill, and the other co-sponsors, Mr. Inslee, Mr. Gilchrist, and Dr. Ehlers, for working on the legislation. I also want to give special thanks to our ranking member, Mr. Inglis, for helping craft the particular amendment we're discussing at present. This amendment incorporates many of the suggestions by the witnesses who appeared at our hearing just 2 weeks ago. The changes made by the amendment do not change the policy goals of the legislation. However, I believe they do improve the bill and will help build a strong program to better understand and address the impacts of ocean acidification. We have been engaged in a full, open, and bipartisan process in the development of this amendment. The committee staff from both sides of the aisle met a couple days after the hearing to begin collaborative efforts on incorporating the changes that were suggested by the panel of expert witnesses. A draft of the proposed changes was developed and shared last week, and over the last few days, the committee staff worked together to put the final amendment together. That process has led us here today with what I think is a good start on a bipartisan bill. All of the witnesses at the hearing indicated that it was not necessary to create a new interagency committee as in the original draft of the legislation. For this reason, the amendment strikes the original language in Section 3 that created the new interagency structure and instead designates the existing Joint Subcommittee on Ocean Science and Technology, JSOST, of the National Science and Technology Council as the coordinating body for federal programs on ocean acidification. The amendment charges the subcommittee of JSOST with the development of the research and monitoring plan and oversight of its implementation. This is not a significant departure in intent from the original bill. However, as we learned in the hearing, it is important to ensure that the work being done in this area is made available to stakeholders so that it can be used, including in the management of our fisheries and coastal resources. For this reason, under the amendment, the subcommittee is responsible for facilitating communication with individuals and non-governmental organizations with an interest in marine resources. Many of our witnesses also highlighted the importance of international cooperation in the field. As a result, the amendment directs the subcommittee to coordinate our research and monitoring efforts with those of other nations. Under our amendment, the subcommittee is directed to provide the research and monitoring plan to Congress within 12 months of enactment and to provide an annual update of the program's progress. This is a slightly shorter time frame than provided for in the original bill. However, it became clear at the hearing that much work has been done toward this end already, so an earlier date will not pose significant problems for JSOST. During the hearing, the witnesses discussed a number of recent workshops and meetings resulting in reports and plans for research on ocean acidification. As we don't want the subcommittee to duplicate these efforts, our amendment directs the JSOST committee to develop the research plan using available reports, studies, and information that have already identified research and monitoring needed to better understand ocean acidification and its impacts. Considering that much of this planning has already occurred, the subcommittee should be able to use this existing information to expedite the planning process. The amendment defines the contents of plans, including specific activities that will be part of the federal program, and a requirement that it outline the relevant activities of the federal agencies that contribute to the program and identify the role of each agency in implementing the plan. Our amendment also requires the plan to include, at a minimum, program elements that reflect it's a different bill we'll introduce shortly, that reflect the 5 research and monitoring themes on ocean acidification that have been identified by NOAA in consultation with the external research community. Our amendment also requires the subcommittee to involve the ocean community in the development of the plan. This includes universities, states, industries, and environmental groups. The importance of involving the outside research committee was particularly emphasized in the hearing. Finally, to ensure the scientific merit of the plan as reviewed by the National Academy of Science is required with a public comment period of at least 60 days. And I should note also the amendment expands the definition of acidification from simply a reduction of pH levels to include the many changes in chemistry of the ocean that occur due to chemical inputs from the atmosphere. The amendment shortens the authorization period to 4 years, whereas the original bill had an indefinite authorization. Again, I want to thank our ranking member, Mr. Inglis, for working with us on this amendment, Chairman Lamson for his support. I look forward to continuing to work together to implement the legislation as we move forward. I encourage all our colleagues to support the amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Recognize Mr. Inglis.
First of all, I'd like to thank Chairman Baird for his leadership on this. We're just back from a very interesting trip to the Galapagos Islands where Chairman Baird continued his tutorial for me on ocean acidification. He started it earlier in Australia. He's actually very knowledgeable about these things, and it's helped me to understand how important this issue is, because if we open up a hole in the bottom of the food chain because of ocean acidification, we really have quite a challenge for the at least 1 billion humans who rely on the ocean for sustenance. So in addition, we heard from some excellent scientists in the Galapagos, and it illustrates really what I was talking about in my opening statement, that we want our scientists to be actively engaged with scientists around the world. And that's what we were seeing in the Galapagos with people like Dr. Julian Sachs at the University of Washington. And he was able to help me with the chemical equation, actually, that explains ocean acidification. But he really got to me, Chairman Baird, when he mentioned the egg in the vinegar, which I think you had already mentioned to me, but finally it got through, that you put an egg in vinegar and what happens? The shell sort of dissolves. Well, same thing happens to calcium-based organisms in the ocean if the acidity increases, the pH goes down. So anyway, this amendment is a helpful effort, I think, to do exactly what Chairman Baird just mentioned. It designates the Joint Subcommittee for Ocean Science and Technology, or JSOST, as the coordinating body for the federal ocean acidification effort, which seems to be a more efficient way to accomplish the goal. It also requires that JSOST create a strategic plan that lays out the U.S. research agenda for the next 10 years. If you have a plan, then you're likely to get there. If you don't have a plan, you're likely to meander around. And it includes a National Academies of Science review of the plan, again using the strengths that we have in the academies. So this substitute will make the underlying bill much better. There's still work to be done, I think, and look forward to working with Chairman Baird and others as we move forward to the full committee markup. And I urge my colleagues to support the substitute.
Anyone else seek recognition? Are there any amendments to Mr. Baird's amendment? Hearing none, the vote occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The vote is on the bill, H.R. 4174, Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act of 2007, as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. I recognize Mr. Baird for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the committee favorably report H.R. 4174 as amended to the full committee. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the subcommittee legislative report and make the necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill in accordance with the recommendations of the subcommittee.
The question is on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Subcommittee members may submit additional or minority views on the measure. We will now consider H.R. 5618, the National Sea Grant College Program Amendments Act of 2008. I would again like to express my strong support for both the Sea Grant program and Ms. Bardalo's bill, and I now recognize Mr. Inglis to present any remarks on the bill.
I'd simply add, Mr. Chairman, that as I said in the opening statement, I support the bill and think it's would urge my colleagues to do likewise.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Anyone else wish recognition? I ask unanimous consent that the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that members proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any amendments? Hearing none, the vote is on the bill, H.R. 5618, the National Sea Grant College Program Amendments Act of 2008. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I recognize Mr. Baird to offer a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the committee favorably report H.R. 5618 to the full committee. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the subcommittee legislative report and make necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill as amended in accordance with the recommendations of the subcommittee.
The question is on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Subcommittee members may submit additional or minority views on the measure. We will now consider a chairman's mark of a bill to establish a research, development, demonstration, and commercial application program to promote research of appropriate technologies for heavy-duty plug-in hybrid vehicles and for other purposes. This mark is the good work of Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner, and I will just again express my support for the gentleman's bill. I now recognize Mr. Inglis to present any remarks on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further remarks. Look forward to moving its consideration.
Does anyone wish to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bartlett, you are recognized.
Thank you very much. This bill recognizes a very serious problem. That is the fact that trucks deliver most of everything that we have, and in the final delivery the trucks are stopping and starting, and this is the least efficient, most polluting way to use a reciprocating engine. And so recognizing that, the Air Force for several years now has been sponsoring the development of a hybrid truck for fueling their aircraft. My concern is that that this bill is too narrowly drawn. The primary challenge in this development is not the plug-in feature. You can buy a Prius automobile and take it to a shop and they will make it a plug-in for you overnight. The primary challenge here is the drivetrain, integrating the electric motor into the drivetrain and the battery pack. And I would be more supportive of the bill if it could be broadened to recognize the primary challenge here, which is not the very simple plug-in feature, but the development of the drivetrain, the integration of the electric motor into the drivetrain, and the development of the batteries. These are huge trucks. Batteries will not carry them very far. The plug-in will not add a lot of versatility to it. The primary versatility is the fact that when you stop, your engine stops, and you are no longer polluting and using fuel. So I would hope that before this gets to full committee, that the bill could be broadened to investigate the really challenging features in this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? I ask unanimous consent that the mark is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that members proceed with amendments in order of the roster without objection, so ordered. The first amendment on the roster is a manager's amendment offered by the gentlelady from Illinois. Ms. Biggert, are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to the chairman's mark offered by Mrs. Biggert of Illinois.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentlelady for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a simple, straightforward amendment that is intended to resolve a potential jurisdictional conflict. Section 1D of the bill is rewritten to clarify that the department shall conduct research on vehicle usage and alternative drivetrains, which may help Mr. Bartlett in doing some more research on this, and how those alternative drive trains perform in comparison to their conventional counterparts. And just to be clear, this language, as well as the language in the rest of the bill, is still open to critique and modification based on feedback from interested parties as we continue through the legislative process. But this really is a clarification that the jurisdiction will stay within this committee. So with that, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Biggert. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Further discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any amendments? Hearing none, the vote is on the chairman's mark to establish a research, development, demonstration, and commercial application program to promote research of appropriate technologies for heavy-duty plug-in hybrid vehicles and for other purposes as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I recognize Mr. Baird to offer a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the committee favorably report the mark as amended to the full committee. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the subcommittee legislative report and make necessary technical and conforming changes to the mark in accordance with the recommendations of the subcommittee.
Question is on the motion to report the mark favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the mark is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Subcommittee members may submit additional or minority views on the measure. Now, I want to thank members for their attendance. This concludes our subcommittee markup. We are adjourned.